Let's continue with the second and onwards midsections. For that, we can reuse a lot of the code we've already written. Let's copy this whole block of code from new point to counter plus is 1. Control C that. And we begin underneath second and onward midsections with another if statement or an else if statement. Elif counter is bigger than 0, and there comes our counter. Copy paste. Just for ease of reading, I'm adding a blank line, and make sure that new point is also indented equal to everything else. So this is where our code is basically the same, but instead of building height, we're going to be adding mid segment height. And that is quite literally the only change we will get. Now if you click outside of your Python node, you can already see that our point cloud is growing. And because we've painted a few red values on top of our grid before, we already have some height data to work with. So you can see that some stacks of points are taller than others. Let's continue underneath our top section first though, because we want, of course, to finish the code properly. Let's make that a bit bigger again. So underneath top section, we're just going to add an else statement. And this else statement is in response to our while statement. So the while loop checks that the total height is less than the skyline height minus the top section height. If that is true, then this block and this block is run. First this block if counter is 0, and then if counter becomes 1, which we say here, it becomes this block. And it will run that until else is met. So that will run that until this is no longer true. So if the total height exceeds the skyline height minus the top section, it's going to jump to this block. And that is the final block of the stacking code. So let's paste again. If you still have the code copied, it's the same block again with a few tweaks. So once we've met our height, we want to have all these things the same, but we want to change mid segment height to top segment height. And our total height is now total height plus top segment height. And again, the counter plus is 1. This is where we're going to add a break statement. And if all goes well, we should now be able to unleash our while loop without freezing Houdini. Let's unhash that and see what happens. And we have an error message. Let's see why. So the error is being caused by building ID top. Yeah, and that is because the while loop also requires a colon to be finished off with. So once we finish the top section code, just make sure that the while loop ends with a colon and that the building ID is building ID top. I forgot to do that initially. Once those two have been corrected, the code should run and we should see this. And we should now be able to start copying the building segments onto each point. Let's save our scene just to be safe. I'm going to make our code window a bit smaller. I'm going to drop down a new null node. I'm going to call it out point cloud and color it yellow. Now the next step is to fetch your buildings into this node, and we'll do that in the next clip.